Sometimes I find the most challenging thing about reading the Bible is actually trying to figure out the logic between two passages that follow each other. You'll have two passages, they both make sense. You can understand this one and you can understand this one. You're just not sure why they belong together, why they follow each other. How do you get from this passage to this passage? What is the train of thought that means that this transition is coherent, an obvious, logical way to develop the argument that you are following as you're reading the Bible? Now, this shift in Ecclesiastes 5, that's one of those challenging transitions, or at least it has been for me. I've been reading it and thinking, okay, the section, chapter 5, verses 1 to 7, that makes sense. The passage beginning at verse 8 and going on from there, that makes sense. But what's the connection between the two passages? Solomon's been talking about worship and about the danger of participating in the worship of God in a way that's meaningless. And then suddenly he begins this whole section on money. Now, what's the connection between the two? I've been thinking about this for a few days. It takes me a while to work these things out because, I'm bare little brain and all that. But I think what's going on in Solomon's head and in his heart, more to the point, is this. I think that what he's thinking is, if we are worshiping God in a way that is meaningless, then there is something else that we will be worshiping in a way that is meaningful. All right. In other words, if we're not really worshiping God, then we really will be worshiping something else. If we're not looking to God to give us meaning and purpose, then absolute guarantee we are looking to someone or something else to give us purpose and meaning and significance. And for Solomon, that something else was money. And of course, everything that money could give him. Now, it's not always the case. It often is, and we'll look at that in a couple of sessions' time. But it's not always the case. For some people, it's family. For some, it's a particular kind of relationship. For some, it's their involvement in a sport. It's an ability that they have, or it's their intellect, or something. But if we aren't worshiping God, then there is something else or someone else that we are worshiping. And it's always worth exploring what that might be. For Solomon, as we'll see, it's money. I'm not worshiping God meaningfully, but I am meaningfully worshiping money. But what is it for us? Now, the way to discover the answer to that question isn't just to ask that question, okay? We're far too canny and sophisticated to give up an answer to such a deep question that easily. All right, no. This sort of thing, we need to come at sideways, indirectly. All right, the questions that reveal your idols to you are questions about what your dreams are, what your hopes are, your aspirations, or even more revealingly, what are your nightmares? What are the things that you think, if I lost that, life would be unbearable? I actually don't know how I could go on. What is it that I am so afraid of losing? Just the thought of losing it makes me anxious, keeps me awake at night. And it's the thing that if somebody else has that and I don't, it provokes jealousy or bitterness. Right? That's the sort of thing that gives you clues about what your idols are. Or another question is, what is it that when it's attacked or challenged provokes a disproportionate kind of emotional reaction? You sort of think, where did that come from? Well, it came from your idols being attacked. Now, often, as we reflect on these things, and we're asking the Spirit to give us insight into our own heart, and we're reflecting on who we are, and we're looking for the clues that point to what our idols might be. It might surprise us what those idols are. For those of us who are Christians, the fact that we have idols might be a disturbing kind of realization. But if you think about it, it's probably a telltale sign of how rarely the things that keep us awake at night are the things of God. Actually, there are other things that we give much more time and attention to. But the thing that's most disorientating about identifying our idols is that often that they're not things that we usually think of as sinful. They're often things that in the right place and in themselves are really good, healthy things. Things like a career, or maybe family, or kids, or like Solomon, it's money. These aren't bad things in themselves. Wanting to do well at your job is not necessarily a bad thing at all. In fact, they can be great things. The problem isn't with them so much as it is with us and how we see them and relate to them. All right, way back in the 5th century, Augustine, the great North African bishop, Augustine talked about how the essence of sin is disordered love. So taking something that should be in second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth place and putting it in first place, elevating it to the place of our affections. And the tragedy is that when you do that, you end up sacrificing things that should be high on the list, but you sacrifice them for things that actually should be lower down, and you end up losing that which is most valuable. And then, at the end of it all, your idol will fail you and it will destroy you. Because no idol can bear the weight of you looking to it to give you purpose and meaning and significance. For Solomon, and remember, Ecclesiastes is an autobiographical book. This is Solomon's act of repentance. For Solomon, it was about money. And the Bible is pretty unambiguous on this. The worship of money is called greed. Or another Bible word for it is covetousness. And that's what we're going to be looking at together with Solomon over the next few videos. And I suspect that some of us are going to find this pretty challenging, because Solomon's mistake, like many of the mistakes we've seen already in the book of Ecclesiastes, the mistake that he makes here is actually an incredibly common one. Sometimes people say, the Bible is not very relevant. Generally, the people who say that have never actually read the Bible. If you read the Bible, then you know how bang up to date it is and how it is so relevant to the issues and the struggles that we face even today. You see, the problem isn't that the Bible is irrelevant. Actually, the problem is that the Bible is usually too relevant to be comfortable.